The film opens with Princess Diana in a hotel room, getting ready to head out. She ends up walking into a lift with some other people. She briefly stops when she thinks she hears something, but then continues. This is a scene of Diana's last day alive, as she passed after a car accident in France in 1997. The scene cuts to an earlier point in time, where Diana is at a charity event at a school in London. She is then taken away by car, as paparazzi try to take pictures of her, which makes her visibly uncomfortable. The next few scenes show Diana trying various methods of relaxation such as acupuncture, going out to the opera, and running. This all takes place before her infamous interview with Martin Bashir in 1995, where she openly spoke about her failing marriage and being outcast by the British royal family. Diana arrives at a hospital, where her good friend Una is watching over her husband, who has suffered from a hemorrhage. Just then, the doctor, whose name is Hasnat Khan, enters the room. Diana can't help but avert her gaze from the doctor. The next day, Diana is again at the hospital. She gets into the lift, and Hasnat is already in there. The two of them start talking, and Diana reveals that she quite likes hospitals. Hasnat suggests giving her a tour, and Diana replies that she would like that and states that she would like to give him her contact number. Later, Diana is at home speaking to her secretary Patrick. He questions her about a supposed interview with the BBC, and Diana assures him that it is nothing to worry about while she reads a copy of Grey's Anatomy. Hasnat eventually gives Diana a tour of the hospital, where they each speak about their respective pasts. He shows her the on-call accommodation, where healthcare staff can rest if they're working very long shifts. Diana is amused by how small the room is and states that Hasnat can come to stay at her home when he wants to take a break, which makes him laugh, though she is serious. One night, Hasnat arrives at Diana's home. The two of them spend the night together, drinking and talking about music. They then eat a meal Diana has prepared for them, but it's her first time cooking, so the meal isn't made so well. Hasnat suggests they order hamburgers, and that's what they do, as they spend the rest of the night watching football. Before Hasnat leaves, he asks whether he will be in trouble, as Diana is married to the prince. She informs him that the marriage is in the process of ending, and he takes his leave. The next night, Diana wants to see Hasnat again, but he is unable to answer the phone. She becomes impatient and arrives at the hospital, where she runs into Hasnat, who has just finished an operation. He finds it amusing that the princess has come to see him and informs her that he was planning to give her a call once he was done with work. Diana walks out of the hospital, where she is stopped by a journalist who wants to know what she's up to. She becomes frustrated, so she takes his phone and calls his superior, informing him that she is at the hospital visiting the sick. Later, she is joined by Hasnat in the car, who informs her that he won't be able to take this relationship any further. He acknowledges her status and fame, but emphasizes that his life cannot be like hers, and apologizes. However, Diana refuses to give up on him. Therefore, she buys a wig so that they may be able to date as a normal couple. She arrives at his apartment, and Hasnat doesn't recognize her at first, but is shocked to realize that the woman in front of him is Diana. The two go out together to watch a comedy show. The next day, Diana wakes up happy, and the first thing she does is call Hasnat and inform him that she would love to do their night again. That night, Hasnat is alone at the pub when Diana's infamous, scathing interview with Martin Bashir airs. Hasnat cannot take his eyes off the screen. The next day, a furious Patrick questions Diana about her intentions to do such an interview. He has no idea how to respond and as a result, hands in his resignation. However, Diana reacts as if she expected as much. Diana realizes that a lot of people's reactions towards the interview are negative, which she didn't anticipate. She meets Hasnat at a chicken shop, and he asks her what her strategy is behind the interview. Diana explains that she had no strategy, she just wanted payback on the royal family. That night, Hasnat heads back with Diana to her home. The two of them spend the night together and even end up making love. Sometime shortly, Diana is in Africa, visiting AIDS patients in a bid to cleanse her public image after the interview. She has armies of paparazzi following her, which this time, she wants. Hasnat calls her to voice his support for this decision, and advises her to use her star power to control the narrative around her, and even use it to raise awareness for the people that need it, such as unfortunate children who have had their limbs blown off as a result of unmarked minefields. Once back in London, Diana goes straight to Hasnat's apartment, where she ends up staying the night. They also spend the next day with each other, with Diana observing an operation conducted by Hasnat. Later, they walk along the Thames, and Hasnat tells her about his mentor, Victor Chang. He reveals that his mentor was shot, and Diana surprises him by reciting a passage from the Quran. The next day, Diana picks up Hasnat in her butler's car and drives off to what she describes as the edge of the kingdom. When they arrive, standing at the edge of some cliffs looking out at sea, Diana reveals to Hasnat that she will be off to Sydney soon for a Victor Chang charity event. Hasnat is very happy for her, and the two of them run around, enjoying their time alone before heading back to London. While Diana is in Sydney, Hasnat spots a news article identifying him as the man who stole the princess's heart. He is instantly mortified at the waves of attention he is receiving, even at his place of work. The news of this reaches Diana, who realizes she must rubbish the story to protect Hasnat. She makes a call to the press, stating that the story about her and Hasnat is nonsense. The press then releases a story that Diana's affair rumor isn't true, which Hasnat also sees, and this also annoys him. That evening, Diana is at his apartment, and the two argue about how the newspapers can't stop speaking about him. Hasnat voices his frustrations about his co-workers laughing behind his back. He goes on to further explain that he believes they have no future together as he is a surgeon, and that he cannot work with the paparazzi sticking their cameras in his face. Diana storms off, crying while walking through the streets of London. As she sits on a bench with tears streaming down her face, Una comes to comfort her. The next day, Diana tries several times to call Hasnat to no avail. She even puts on different accents so no one would recognize her voice. But Hasnat hangs up every time he realizes it is Diana. She eventually goes to his apartment, though he isn't at home. While he's away, Diana does his dishes and cleans his apartment. The two eventually reconcile, and she apologizes to him for her intrusive behavior. The two sleep together that night, and Diana suggests she visit Hasnat's home village in Pakistan as a way to persuade his mother to accept her as her daughter-in-law. Hasnat is overjoyed by the idea, though Diana believes she must go on her own. Once there, Diana gets along with all of Hasnat's family, except his mother. Hasnat's mother grew up during the partition of India and Pakistan in the 40s, and she informs Diana that millions lost their lives in this event orchestrated by the British. She cannot forget or forgive, even though Diana apologizes. However, Diana is very well received by the rest of Hasnat's family, especially his grandmother. Diana arrives back in London, where she tells Hasnat all about her trip to his home. She then suggests that the two of them move out of the country, though Hasnat is skeptical about this idea as they both have commitments, he to his work and Diana to her children. Diana attends some charity events, and at one event she asks a senior doctor acquaintance if he could help her in obtaining a job for Hasnat. She then sells one of her dresses at an auction for $500,000 for AIDS patients and arrives back in London with her sons. Not long after, she visits Hasnat at his apartment. Hasnat is not happy, as he has received word that he has a job application accepted for a position in Boston, but he doesn't recall applying for such a role. He is furious, as he knows Diana is behind this. Diana explains that she was trying to find a way for them to be together, but Hasnat asks how they can be together when she constantly seeks to take away his livelihood. Diana storms off, but Hasnat arrives at her home shortly after. He apologizes for his outburst and admits that he cannot live without her before the two of them embrace. The next day, Hasnat meets with his uncle in London and asks him what the family thinks of Diana. His uncle assures him that the family loves Diana, though his mother will never give her approval for her son to marry a divorced Christian woman. Hasnat states that he loves Diana so much, and uncle replies that he is blessed to have such a wonderful woman in his life, but also reminds Hasnat that he is a very private person. Diana bids her sons farewell and heads over to meet Hasnat in a park during the evening. The two of them speak about their future, and Hasnat voices his concerns. The princess immediately realizes that this is not going the way she'd hoped, and she asks if this is because Hasnat's mother would never give her approval. Hasnat responds that the two of them living abroad will likely never happen. Diana, now upset, angrily states that Hasnat is now on the list with her ex-husband labeled the past. She informs him their relationship is over and storms off home, where she begins to cry while playing the piano. The next few days, Diana attempts to move on. She practices playing the piano, partying with her friends, and going shopping while being chased by the paparazzi. Shortly after, she is introduced to a man named Dodi Al-Fayed, the son of an Egyptian billionaire. Dodi immediately takes a liking to Diana, and the two of them begin spending more time together. However, Diana isn't after Dodi's love. Instead, she purposely tips off the paparazzi to take pictures of her with a potential new partner so that Hasnat may see them in the newspaper. A few days later, once Diana arrives back home, she calls Hasnat. He almost answers her call, but instead lets her leave a message. She then receives a phone call, believing it to be Hasnat, but it is Dodi asking to meet her again. Diana agrees to meet Dodi, likely as she knows it will make Hasnat jealous, who does pay attention to all the news headlines that involve Diana. Whilst on his yacht, she contacts a reporter who she knows is taking photographs of her, and she asks whether he's taken enough photographs of her. Later, Dodi and Diana are together in Paris. Meanwhile, Hasnat is in his apartment, listening to messages that Diana has left him, informing him that she desperately wants to speak to him. The next scene is the same one as the one at the start. Diana heads into a lift, accompanied by Dodi and several bodyguards. What happened after this was the car Diana was in was involved in an unfortunate accident, one she did not survive. Hasnat is woken up at 4 a.m. by both his phones ringing. He answers and is told the terrible news. The last scene shows Hasnat placing a bouquet outside Diana's home, along with a handwritten poem that promises to meet her in a garden.